More information is out about the 2 terror attacks on New Year's Day. The leading cause of death worldwide last year has just come out. It's probably not what you think it is. And on a lighter note, finally, a comedienne roasted the Democrats on CNN while Anderson Cooper looked on in horror. I'm Michael Knowles. This is The Michael Knowles Show. Welcome back to the show. Tom Homan, who's Trump's new border czar, has just come out and said that there are many, many migrant kids who are likely in sexual slavery because Biden himself has let hundreds of thousands of them into the country. This show is sponsored by Mayflower. I've mentioned that Mayflower has not only supported the show in a financial way. Mayflower is personally supporting this show because I have been at home for 2 weeks, mandated by the DailyWire. The office is closed, and so I am personally being powered by Mayflower cigars. I think we're sold out after Christmas for a number of products, but get what you can. Get what you can at the website. Okay, sorry about the show yesterday. I need to make an apology on behalf of our computers, because I did a really, really great show yesterday, okay? And I was wearing a very stylish sweater, and it looked great. My hair was on point. Everything was terrific. And then the video was lost. So you can listen to yesterday's show on audio. I was thinking, I don't know, what could we do? We could get a robot to do it on AI to get a video, but today, all the cameras, all the computers are working. Yesterday's show was very heavy because the new year is kicking off with 2 terror attacks, and it's coming at you really hard, 2025. Well, today's show is going to be heavy too, because we have the worldwide leading cause of death last year. The numbers are in, and the leading cause of death last year was abortion. Many of you might not have expected, some of you probably did expect that, but many of you probably would not expect that, because in our culture, we're taught not to think of abortion as death. In our culture, we're taught to think of abortion as health care, as a wonderful expression of rights, as an instantiation of freedom. So why would you think of it as death? But that is the leading cause of death. According to Worldometer, 45 million babies were killed through abortion just last year. By the way, that might be a conservative number. Other estimates put it significantly higher, but we'll just use the conservative number. 45 million babies were killed through abortion last year. To put that number in perspective, the number of people who died from cancer worldwide last year, 8.2 million. The number of people who died from smoking cigarettes, 5 million. How about HIV and AIDS? We constantly hear about the global scourge of HIV/AIDS killing so many people. 1.7 million. 1.35 million people died from car crashes. 1.1 million from suicide. The number from abortion, 45 million. Abortions accounted for 42% of all deaths in the world last year. I'll put that number in historical context. World War II is the deadliest conflict ever in human history. Some 70 million or so people died in World War II. That's over a 6-year period. That means that 11.7 million people died per year from World War II. That means that abortion is killing just under 4 times as many people as the deadliest conflict in human history did per year. The second deadliest conflict in human history is World War I. 15 million people died in World War I. World War I lasted for a little over 4 years. That means that abortion kills 3 times as many people in 1 year as the second deadliest conflict in human history killed in more than 4 years. That means that abortion kills 12 times as many people per year as the second deadliest conflict in human history did. How about the Black Death? Black Death, considered one of the most violent, gory, deadly events in all of human history. An estimated 25 to 50 million people died during the Black Death. Black Death lasted about 7 years in the 14th century. Abortion kills that number of people, or more, or significantly more, in 1 year. Not 7 years, 1 year. Why do I bring all this up? Not just to be a Debbie Downer, but to point out that we are living in a really dark age. So people are saying, wow, man, 2025 is really kicking off in a dark way with all these attacks and global instability, and who knows, probably more attacks will come at this rate before the inauguration. Yeah, 2025 is dark. This whole era is pretty dark, though. Meanwhile, you have the liberals, the classical liberals and the progressive liberals. They say, no, this is the greatest era ever. Violence has fallen to a record low. People are so prosperous. This is all sunshine and roses. We're at the end of history. Globalism, liberalism, it's the apotheosis. It's so wonderful. On the contrary, we are currently living in just liberal modernity in the most violent and barbaric time ever in human history. It's important to keep that in perspective. We have to stop abortion because it's so evil. Because as Mother Teresa said at the UN, this was actually in her Nobel Peace Prize acceptance speech, if a mother can kill her own children, there's nothing that people cannot do to one another. It's the gravest evil in the world. So you have to stop it for the injustice. But also because abortion means, legal abortion, not just in America, but worldwide, means we are living in the worst time. I think by any serious analysis, you would have to say we are living in the least civilized, most barbaric, certainly most violent time in history. It's not even close. So on that cheerful note, we turn to what's been going on over the past few days. There was this terror attack in New Orleans about 3:15 in the morning, New Year's Eve going into New Year's Day. Initially, the FBI said it's not a terror event. They sent that ridiculous woman out with the sparkly nose ring to say, first thing she said, this is not a terror event. Then the DHS Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas came out. He said, no, this is being investigated as a terror attack. It's obviously a terror attack. The guy with the Arab name who drove the car into people and shot people was carrying an ISIS flag. Well, what do we know about this guy? Court records show that this guy had a rough financial situation. He was separating from his wife. He was way behind on house payments. He had a bunch of credit card debt. He was in bad straits. Then you add the ideological element on, which is that he had the ISIS flag. When the FBI corrected itself and said, okay, this is terrorism, they said, we don't believe he was acting alone. Now the update from the FBI is, no, we do think he was acting alone. So yet again, there is no credibility to the FBI here. Now, if the FBI comes out and says this was terrorism, now I think it wasn't terrorism. The FBI comes out and says he was acting alone, I think he wasn't acting alone. It's basically opposite day, because the FBI has so destroyed its credibility, not just over the past 2 or 3 years, but over the past 10 years, that people have absolutely no faith in the FBI. And people are looking at these 2 attacks that occurred hours apart, and they're beginning to question the narrative. They're questioning what they're being told. And it's not the fault of the people who are questioning it. You're going to hear a lot about tinfoil hat conspiracy theorists and how you shouldn't jump to crazy conclusions. I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but a conspiracy theory is the rational conclusion to come to when the authorities in charge are demonstrating their willingness to engage in a conspiracy. We know that the FBI themselves have engaged in conspiracies going back at least to the Russia hoax. So you have to ask questions. Did this guy have a connection to ISIS? I don't know, maybe. Was he acting alone? I don't know. Do I believe what the FBI said the first time or the second time? Then you tie it in with the Cybertruck. The Cybertruck story has gotten so much weirder. So hours after the New Orleans attack, there is a guy who blows up a Cybertruck in front of Trump Hotel in Las Vegas. The guy not only had military experience, like the attacker in New Orleans, now we're being told the guy in the truck that exploded was an active duty Green Beret. And it gets weirder from there. We'll get to that in one moment. First, though, speaking of the deep state and espionage and conspiracies, I just recently sat down on Michael Land with Jack Barsky, a former Soviet spy who was a sleeper cell from the KGB in the United States for years, and then he left the KGB and was still undetected in America for years afterward. We sat down, we talked about spying, how he left it all behind, and even his conversion to Christ. Check out this teaser.
All they knew was that I was a hardcore communist, and I was pretty smart. Being recruited by the mighty KGB, that's like,
You're like James Bond.
You know, I had loved this woman and I could shake her off like this.
Do you have to be kind of a sociopath to be a spy?
That's a good question. I've never been asked that question.
What is the mission that you were sent into America to do?
Open up a business, and the KGB knew how to launder money and come to the United States with $20 million. With this kind of money, I would have made it into the upper echelons of society right next to the Pentagon.
Right.
I would have been a very dangerous spy. I thought I had become untouchable, with one exception though, eventually a betrayal by a KGB agent. I became very depressed. One day I went to the altar at that church, and I think it was my subconscious again forcing me to get up, go up there, and the pastor asked me, "Can I do something for you?" And I said, "I want to give my life to Jesus." It makes me almost cry. Sorry.
Go watch the full episode now of Michael and Jack Barsky. You can get it on the Michael Knowles YouTube channel. You can also subscribe to DailyWire Plus. You get the ad-free, uncensored, totally full-on version. DailyWire Plus. The Cybertruck terror attack was allegedly perpetrated by an active duty U.S. Army Green Beret. That's according to law enforcement. He was a master sergeant. So this is a senior enlisted rank. This is E8, which makes the story way weirder. According to the Army, U.S. Army Special Operations Command can confirm that this guy was assigned to the command and on approved leave at the time of his death. So he's in Germany. He gets leave around Christmas time. He goes and then allegedly blows up the Cybertruck at the Trump Hotel. According to the Metropolitan Police Department Sheriff, Kevin McMahill, this guy, the Green Beret, was found inside the vehicle with a self-inflicted gunshot wound to the head. Hold on. Put a pause right here. You're telling me that this active duty Green Beret comes back to America, drives a Cybertruck up to the Trump Hotel, shoots himself in the head, and then blows up the Cybertruck. Now, I guess it's possible. He could have just timed the truck to detonate. So he shoots himself in the head. He clicks it, it's going to go off in some matter of time, shoots himself in the head, and then it explodes. Except, we have some video of this. If the guy blew his brains out in the truck, there were people, he was at a valet stand. There were valets around him. No one noticed that? No one heard the gunshot? It's possible. The Cybertruck is a real tough vehicle. That seems a little weird to me. Did this guy just have it out for Trump? I don't know. I know some Green Berets. I know a number of people in special forces. They're not usually liberal Democrats. They're not usually Kamala voters. And according to reports, this guy was a Trump supporter. Apparently he was a pretty serious Trump supporter. So he's going to take the Elon Musk car, that's the car of Trump's most prominent supporter, and then he's going to kill himself by blowing up a truck in front of Trump Hotel, in front of the hotel owned by the guy that he supposedly supports for president. Hold on, it gets weirder. Law enforcement says this guy did not have any help carrying out the attack. Surveillance cameras track him all alone on his trip from Colorado Springs to Las Vegas. Then you got an independent journalist, Nick Sorter, who's reporting that this guy was trying to recruit mercenaries to go fight in Ukraine. Now, this is making my mind think of Ryan Routh, the guy who tried to murder Trump on the golf course in the second assassination attempt on President Trump. That guy was also actively trying to recruit mercenaries for Ukraine. Now, I have a letter, somewhere in my home office, I have a letter from Congress that was sent to me to warn me that I was on something like a Ukrainian hit list for raising any questions about Ukraine funding. I'm not even actively anti-Ukraine. I ended up on that list. That's very strange. You got the two of three guys who perpetrate major anti-Trump attacks, who are not in the federal government. Actually, they were in the federal government because they work for the Army, but put that aside. You got the assassination attempt in Pennsylvania, you have the assassination attempt on Trump's golf course, and you have this explosion at the Trump Hotel. Two of those three guys were actively trying to recruit people to go fight in Ukraine. That's pretty weird. According to Sorter, there's a photo of this guy wearing a Glory to Ukraine shirt. There's no firm confirmation of this stuff. It's just kind of floating around social media, and it's hard to pin down this guy's social media right now. Now, you add on top of this that senior non-commissioned officers, like a master sergeant, like E8 pay grade, these are supposed to be pretty seriously vetted individuals. Now you add on top of this, again, I don't want to suggest anything, I don't want to speculate, but that is what I'm going to do. He uses a car, one of the few vehicles in the world that can be remotely controlled. I have friends who have Teslas. They can summon the Tesla to come drive to them. You don't have to be actively driving it. And then we're told that the guy actually was dead before the explosion went off. And then, this part's really weird. They can identify him in part because he was carrying his military ID. All right, that's normal. And his passport. Now, maybe, look, I guess he'd flown in from Germany some days prior, but hold on. Why is this guy carrying a passport if he's going to carry out an attack that's domestic? He was already in America. What's he need his passport for? And then on top of that, you're telling me that the passport survived the firebomb? He had all these explosives in the truck and the passport survives, such that officers can identify him? Not saying it's impossible. I'm saying it's real weird. I'm really not offering an alternative theory as to what's going on here. The only point I want to make is that it is perfectly rational to consider alternative theories than what we are being told by agencies of the government that have repeatedly lied to us, specifically about Donald Trump, in recent years. Especially when a mere turn of a head by about 20 degrees over the summer, an implausible last-minute jerk of the head is the only reason that Donald Trump's brains were not splattered on a stage in Pennsylvania back in the summer. And then another assassination attempt, absolutely implausible security failures, and now this attack for which the more that we learn, the less it makes sense. Pretty strange. So let's zoom up. Let's go all the way up to the head of the Department of Homeland Security, the guy who's supposed to be keeping us safe. What has that guy been working on to keep us safe from terror attacks during his term in office? The guy who's supposed to keep us safe from all the terrorism tells us exactly what he thinks is the greatest terror threat back in 2022. This was him speaking at the National Action Network. National Action Network is a left-wing group. It's really just Al Sharpton's extortion racket. It's just a group, a slush fund that allows Al Sharpton to shake down people by threatening to call them racist. Here's what Mayorkas said there.
And what we in the Department of Homeland Security have assessed is that the greatest terrorism-related threat that we face in the homeland is the threat of domestic violent extremism. Individuals drawn to violence because of ideologies of hate or false narratives propagated on social media and other online platforms. And the most prominent threat is the threat of white supremacists.
That's it. That's the most prominent threat. Never mind that a guy named Abu al-Jabari or whatever is not his real name. I try not to use their real names. Guy with a pretty Arabic-sounding name carrying an ISIS flag is the one who mows down people on New Year's Eve in New Orleans. Never mind that, well, the story about the Vegas doesn't make any sense. Kind of like that other attack in Vegas. Remember the Las Vegas shooter? That mass shooter in Las Vegas that we never really learned basically anything about? It was some years ago now, just wiped from the news. But I don't think he was a white supremacist. I don't think the guy who nearly murdered Trump over the summer was a white supremacist. I don't think Ryan Routh, unsuccessful attempted assassin, was a white supremacist. Doesn't seem like the biggest threat to me. Totally ridiculous explanation. But of course, this guy, Alejandro Mayorkas, is the guy who's in charge of the border, at least officially in charge of the border. Kamala Harris was made the border czar by Joe Biden in 2021, but he's officially in charge of the border. He's the guy who's let all these people in, including, by conservative estimates, 1,000 Islamic terrorists? Totally ridiculous. But then this made me think of something really strange. We've just entered into 2025. And how are we entering into 2025? With all the debates that have been going on, debates over terrorism, debates over immigration, debates over H-1B visas, it seems to me now, the conclusions we've drawn in the last 2 weeks are, the biggest threat is from Muslim terrorists. legal immigration is good. We want more legal immigration. Forget about restricting immigration. We want more legal immigration, but it's got to be legal. It can't be illegal immigration. We just had regime change in a Ba'athist state in the Middle East, in Syria, and it made me think, is 2025 just 2005? Are we just in a time machine? We're like three free trade agreements away from just being all the way back in Bush-era politics. We talk about the political horseshoe a lot. Things circle back. History repeats itself. We might be just right back in the mid-2000s. I hope that I can make a lot of money shorting Bear Stearns. I'm not sure that that's the case. Now, before we get to a little levity, because there was a beautiful display on CNN, a comedienne on New Year's Eve just destroyed CNN and the Democrats, and it has political significance. We'll get to that in one moment. First, I want to tell you about Yes or No. Do not miss the latest episode of Yes or No featuring comedian John Crist. Here's this teaser.
Oh, men should never take a paternity leave. Not because there's anything wrong with taking care of the family, but because you don't want people to think you're a lesbian.
Okay, I didn't read the end of that, dude. Hold on.
Watch the full episode now on the Michael Knowles YouTube channel, or subscribe to see the uncensored, ad-free, totally cool, uncut version over at DailyWire Plus. There was finally good TV on CNN. This was great. It's been many, many years, but CNN is doing coverage around the new year, and a comedian, Whitney Cummings, goes on. She's on screen with Anderson Cooper. Here's what she had to say.
2024 election fried our brains. The Democrats couldn't hold a primary because they were too busy holding a body upright. Are we still rolling? Am I off?
Go for it.
It was amazing that the pro-choice party didn't give their voters one when it came to the presidential candidate. Kamala was forced on us so hard you'd think she was patented by Pfizer or Moderna, whichever one's, oh God. Andy just gave me a very scary look.
No!
I love going around the country because you see that Americans really are more reasonable than they would be portrayed.
Absolutely,
They're pretty great, and I'm
100%
playing bigger and bigger venues now. I thought being a mom would mean that less people would want to come see me. I'm now playing, like 3,000 seat theaters,
awesome.
which is about the viewership of CNN these days.
Well,
Not
nice.
this show, though.
Nice.
All eyes are on this show.
Wow, you're all firing.
Andy and I had a tour. We did like 3,000
remember.
people. Yes.
Love it. Totally love it. Whitney Cummings, I've seen her a little bit over the years, and she's like kind of funny. I don't think she's some right-wing conservative, though. And yet that's the bit she does on CNN. Why? Because I think just everyone is a conservative now. I had this conversation with my wife. She said this to me 6 or 8 months ago. She goes, Mac, are liberals real? So what do you mean are liberals real? She goes, I just don't. Like, I know that everyone's a liberal and the liberals control everything, but like everyone I talk to anywhere, like even people you wouldn't expect, they all hate Kamala and they hate Biden and are there any actual liberals? And I think the comedian that they bring on CNN, they had their pick of the litter. They bring one on, and her whole set is mocking the Democrats, mocking the party, mocking Biden, mocking the DNC leadership that foisted Kamala on them, mocking CNN to their face. That's a cultural shift. Because she's probably liberal. I assume most comedians are liberal in a sense, but the common sense right now is not liberal. It's not just that Whitney Cummings went on CNN and said she was going to stick it to them and have a really provocative performance. Sure, that happened. But just think about the alternative. What other jokes was she going to do? Is she going to do Trump jokes? That would be so stale. That would be such a groaner. The point she makes about CNN having low ratings now, that's real. People don't watch CNN anymore. So she's got to play to her audience. The audience now is much more conservative. The libs have lost the audience. They've literally lost the audience on their TV networks, and they have lost the audience at the ballot box, and they've just lost the common sense. That's it. Liberals might not be real. At some point, I think they were real, but I don't think that they're really real anymore. Okay, back to really sad, scary, terrible stuff. Tom Homan, who is the new border czar, he's the deportation czar under President Trump. He just drew attention to some numbers that I think even most right-wingers, even most Biden critics, are not really aware of. We know Biden's let millions of foreign nationals into our country, unvetted, terrible. The cartels have control of the border. Do you understand just how many children have not only been let into the country illegally, but have been lost by the Biden administration?
Can we talk more about those many, many children that are missing, the unaccompanied children that came across the border? What kinds of plans do you have to retrieve these kids or to find them?
Well, look, I've been honest right from day one that this is going to be one of the most difficult things we've ever done. Based on my 3.5 decades doing this job, a lot of these children are going to be in forced sexual slavery. Many are going to be in forced labor. And not all of them, but many of them are living a life of hell every day, and we got to rescue these children. We'll do the immigration consequences afterwards. First is their health and safety and rescuing them. I guarantee you, we're going to find some of these children in horrendous conditions.
This has to be the GOP's message. The GOP has to follow through on this as a matter of justice. I always preface my political advice with the actual hard issue. As a matter of justice, the Trump administration, Tom Homan, need to follow through on this and find the hundreds of thousands of kids that Joe Biden has allowed to go missing. Many of whom, if not most of whom, are in sexual slavery or other forms of indentured servitude. Also, as a political matter, this has to be the message, because you know that the minute any deportations start, the Democrats are going to drag out the sweetest looking old abuela crying, being pulled away from her grandchildren and from her stove, being thrown back to El Salvador or wherever. And they're going to say that the GOP is heartless and we need to welcome these people in. The reality of illegal immigration is not sweet little abuelas making paella. The reality of illegal immigration is hundreds of thousands of kids go missing, many of whom are in sexual slavery. That's the reality of illegal immigration. You have to drive that home because the populace is fickle sometimes. People's appetites change. They move with prevailing political winds. The winds are in our favor right now. But do not doubt that the Democrat propaganda machine is still a powerful tool. They've lost a lot of their audience, but there is still a powerful tool. Okay, there is a story I really, really want to get to. This is crazy. Bill Gates, the Bill Gates Foundation, has funded research that is going to turn mosquitoes, in fact, has turned mosquitoes into flying syringes to vaccinate people, not only against their will, but without their knowledge. That's real. I know it sounds like I should be talking in this kind of voice right now and about gay frogs and things. It sounds dope. He was right about the gay frogs, by the way. But this is real. Bill Gates, the Bill Gates Foundation-backed Leiden University Medical Center, has turned mosquitoes into flying syringes to vaccinate people without their knowledge. But we don't have time to get to that story. We'll have to get to it on Monday, I guess, because we got to get to the mailbag. You know, the first few days of 2025 have made one thing clear. Our work is far from over. The terror attack in New Orleans, the Cybertruck explosion at President Trump's hotel, they've shaken the country. It's moments like these when you need the facts. Clarity, not confusion. That is why the Daily Wire exists, to bring you the truth that the establishment media won't touch, delivered by the most handsome voices in the conservative movement. Live breaking news, uncensored daily shows, and investigative journalism that cuts to the heart of the story. Do not wait. Join the fight for truth today at dailywire.com/subscribe. My favorite comment yesterday is from, what a great name, is Jesus Rex Mundi, who says, my favorite yes or no collab, this flew by, had a blast listening. I guess that's about the John Crist yes or no, so go check that out on YouTube or Daily Wire Plus if you haven't yet. Finally, after what has it been, 2 weeks, we get to my favorite time of the week, when I get to hear from you in the mailbag. The mailbag is brought to you by Pure Talk. Go to puretalk.com/Knowles to get your Pure Talk phone and service. Take it away.
Hello, Michael. I am seeking some fairly odd friendship and marriage advice. My best friend of nearly 15 years and the best man in my wedding a couple years ago has decided to make a move on my wife through some cryptic texts. I took it as level-headed as I could at the time, but since then my wife has taken it a bit harder than I have. I told her I have no issue cutting out someone who has encroached on our marriage, but she would prefer to talk things out and get him help if he needs, and possibly leaving the door open to friendship down the road. But I am a bit torn between just cutting him out of my life and my wife being a bit emotional in the short term, or letting the proverbial wolf back in the chicken coop. Any advice would be greatly appreciated. Thank you.
Yeah, no. I'm sorry. I don't mean to laugh at your situation, though luckily it seems nothing has transpired. No, that guy's done. He's done. He's over. You delete his phone number. I'm not saying you should threaten him or anything. You shouldn't do that. You should have, patience and grace and charity and everything. But he needs to know that if he ever steps foot on your property, it will not go well for him. What? Are you kidding me? I would say, look, I want to be as encouraging of charity and grace here as I possibly can. Maybe you tell him when you're threatening to remove various appendages of his, maybe you tell him, hey, look, buddy, you have a big problem, and if you ever want some help, at some point, I'm willing to offer you some help. But if you ever even look at my wife again, if I see in your eyes that you're even thinking about my wife again, not going to go well. And then you tell your wife, she deletes his number, she blocks his number. And she better not speak to that guy. She better not think about that guy again either. This would be a moment where the most charitable reading of this is your wife just has a big heart and she wants to help people and whatever. You need to step in as the head of your household, as a husband, and help her from falling into that error of too much empathy. Okay? And no, I don't think so. Absolutely out. You have so much patience and grace that you're even speaking in that measured tone. That guy, I'm thinking of the Untouchables scene, I want his family dead. I want his house burned to the ground. I want to go to the, yeah, it's that would be more my reaction, I think. So you've had a gracious reaction. Don't be suicidally empathetic. That's not good for your family. It's not good for him. It's not good for anyone involved. Next question.
Mr. Knowles, thanks for taking the time. You mentioned on Monday that animals only have instinct and appetite, while humans also have intellect and will. In that case, what would you call it when a dog, or comparably, quote, intelligent animal, looks both ways for their master, does something they will be punished for, and then tries to hide it? This seems a little too involved to be simply mimicry to me. Couldn't this be a form of willfulness? I'd love to hear you go into greater detail on this difference between humans and animals, and the souls of each. Thanks. 30 seconds.
No, it's not much more willfulness. I think your point is good, that a dog demonstrates a greater degree of will and a greater degree of intellect than, say, a rock does, or than a tree does, or than a goldfish does. However, it would be wrong to say that even dogs, even man's best friend, possesses intellect or will. And the way that you can know that you believe that is that you would never put a dog on trial for stealing an extra treat or something like that. The dog has an appetite, and the dog has instinct, and maybe the dog's instinct is to, check out for threats, make sure maybe you're not looking, you're going to check to make sure the owner's in the other room, and then he follows his appetite to get the treat. But the dog, and this is, I think, the crucial distinction, the dog is not capable of subordinating his appetites to his, higher degree of instinct, or what you would be tempted to call intelligence. He can't do that. The dog he's going to go get that treat. He can't control that. He's kind of on autopilot. Humans can. That's why we put humans on trial and we hold them accountable for violating notions of abstract justice about which humans alone among the incarnate creatures can reason. Next question.
Hey, Michael. My name is Ryan, and I work in a cigar lounge in Ohio. Over the last few weeks, I have had an increasing number of customers come in and ask if we have Mayflower cigars. I had a conversation with one gentleman about the new Mayflower compacts, and he was really interested in them, but unfortunately we didn't carry them, and he was actually able to order them online, and he even brought one in and gave me one, and we shared them. We had a great conversation, and there's really some buzz going on around Mayflower cigars, and people are excited and bringing them in, and we obviously don't carry them yet. So I just wanted to know what I have to do to get some Mayflower cigars for the fine people of Columbus, Ohio. Thanks, Michael.
Great question. That might be my favorite question we've had in weeks. And I've gotten similar questions actually before. We are taking on retail shops now. We don't have a huge team built out, and we have more people who are reaching out to us than we have a team to actually service for retail. But the way that you can apply to become a retailer is to go on the website. There's a link to become a retailer. Just submit an inquiry through that. We are committed to being in brick and mortars. This is a major priority for me from the beginning of starting the company, because I think part of the reason I started the company is cigars are about a certain kind of culture. You know, guys go to a lounge, it's a great equalizer. It's just a wonderful culture, and we live in time and space, and we're incarnate beings, and so you got to do stuff with people in real life. So if you apply to become a retailer, we're going to try, especially in the spring, to get as many of those retail shops serviced with Mayflowers as we can. There's a little bit of a production issue because we have more demand than we are able to produce cigars, but in any case, go there. You can apply there, and hopefully we'll get cigars to Ohio very quickly. All right, last voicemail bag.
Hey, Michael. I have a question related to heaven. I know I'm talking to a podcaster and not a priest, but I'm curious your thoughts and beliefs about what heaven actually means and how it works. And one of the specific areas I want you to talk about is interrelational states within heaven. And by that, I mean, obviously, we live in a society of humans where we run into people all the time. We have neighbors, we have friends, we have family, etc. How does that all translate in a long-term or forever term heaven-like scenario? I'm really curious of your thoughts on this topic. Thank you so much.
Great question. Will we have wives in heaven? Or will we have friends in heaven? Or will we go to the cigar lounge in heaven? We might go to a Mayflower cigar lounge in heaven. But we won't have relationships in the way that we presently have relationships, because we will have direct access to God, the most important relationship. Heaven might be defined as unity with God. The scriptures tell us a little bit about heaven. These are not my original views. This is the consistent teaching of the church, rooted in scripture. Heaven is unity with God. In heaven, we behold the beatific vision. So to make it simple, you die, you have a particular judgment. The particular judgment is going to determine where you're going forever. Are you going to heaven or are you going to hell? And are you going to heaven? Do you need a little purification first? Are you going straight to heaven? Probably you need a little purification, would be my guess. I probably will. But you're there. Your soul and body are split at the moment of death. Your body decays, unless you're incorruptible, which is a separate case, and your soul is in heaven. Heaven is when you can behold the beatific vision. You can see God face to face. You are one with God. Then there will be the general judgment after the particular judgment, the end of days. Our Lord comes to judge the living and the dead. His kingdom will have no end. We have glorified bodies, but we're not going to be coupled in heaven. If you've been married and God forbid your wife dies and then you get married again, you don't need to worry about are we going to be polygamous in heaven or something. We will. Look, eye has not seen, nor can we imagine what heaven will be like exactly, but we can have some inkling of it. So we will have unity with God, which means we will also comprehend in God the entire order of the cosmos, and this is everlasting joy. And we will have bodies too, in the resurrection of the body. This is in the creed. We believe not just in a soul flitting through outer space. or in eternity, but the resurrection of the body. So Scripture tells us about 4 marks of what things are like in the life of the world to come. Again, this is just 2,000 years of church teaching. The first is subtlety, the total subordination of the body to the soul. Our bodies and our souls are sometimes a little bit at odds here on earth. You know, we do things we don't want to do. We don't do things we do want to do. We fall prey to concupiscence, but there will be a total subordination of body to soul. There will be agility, the ability to move at the speed of thought. This you see in Christ resurrected. You see all of these things. This is where we get the intuition of what the glorified body is like. The ability to be at the end of the earth, at the end of the universe, just instantaneously. There is impassibility. This is the inability to die or to suffer. There will be no suffering. The lion will lie down with the lamb. There will be no suffering. There will be no death. And then glory. Scripture tells us that we will shine like the sun in the glorified body. So those are the things we can look forward to. And sometimes we think, well, I don't know, if I can't be with my dog in heaven, is it really heaven or something like that? You know, C.S. Lewis took this up in The Great Divorce. He said, well, can there really be joy in heaven knowing that there are people suffering in hell? Now, C.S. Lewis's answer is, it's hard to imagine now in our fallen state, or rather in our fallen world, but it might be the case that actually there's great joy in heaven, joy at the justice of the damned receiving their just deserts in hell. It's very difficult to comprehend this on earth. But there will be no suffering, there will be no tears except the tears of joy at the central fact of heaven, which is oneness with God, beholding the beatific vision. I want to get to one written mailbag because we're not going to have a member block today because I'm stuck in my home office and we'll be back in the studio next week, unless this oddly shaped snowstorm decides to move in and forces me to be locked up in my home again. I won't describe the shape of the snowstorm. You can see it on AccuWeather. Question from Ashley. Michael, my sister's friend from church got married this year. She has very different views on what a woman's role in marriage is. For example, she doesn't believe in birth control. She believes that women should carry the baby to full term whether she wants to or not. She shouldn't. No, she believes that women should have kids, that sex should be oriented toward kids, and you shouldn't kill your kids. Okay, I'm on board. She seems great. Does she have a sister that I can introduce my friends to? She also thinks the husband should be in charge of deciding how many children the woman should have, and that intimacy should only be used to procreate. Okay, well, it's not so much that the husband, the husband is the head of the household, so he decides in a grand sense of things, but it's more that the husband and the wife are both accepting marriage for what it is, which is that marriage entails a perfect sharing, a perfect intimacy between husband and wife, which is necessarily open to life. So it's not merely the Norm Macdonald take that sex is a filthy, shameful thing that's obviously only meant for procreation. It's not quite that, but it's that sex is for procreation, and so you shouldn't foreclose that opportunity. But it doesn't mean, times of the month where it's not likely you can't have a roll in the hay with your spouse. My sister sees this as a red flag because it limits the woman's freedom in her marriage. Again, it limits her freedom in the false sense of freedom that liberal modernity gives us, the Luciferian sense of freedom that tells us that freedom is the ability to do whatever we wish and to worship ourselves. But in the classical sense of freedom, certainly in the Christian sense of freedom, freedom is the right to do what we ought to do. It's not the freedom of the heroin addict to kill himself on the street, it's the freedom to flourish. And so in that sense, it wouldn't limit the woman's freedom at all. Now, Ashley goes on, I, on the other hand, chose not to interfere because at the end of the day, it's her marriage. She can do whatever she wants with her husband. What do you think? Love the work and all the work that you and everyone at the Daily Wire do. May God be with you and your family. Thank you so much. Well, I guess I've given you my take. She seems great. May every man be so lucky to find a woman as that. I think she's doing a good job, and a lot of people have a lot to learn from her. Okay, that's our show. We don't have a member block, but I will see you Monday. I'm Michael Knowles. This is The Michael Knowles Show.